"Get out! This house is ours now!" Richard's voice boomed through the hallway of what had been my home for 35 years. My hands trembled as I clutched my hastily packed suitcase. The weight of it, nothing compared to the heaviness in my chest. I looked into the faces of my children, Jennifer and Michael, standing behind their father, their expressions a mixture of defiance and something else. Was it guilt? Shame? It didn't matter. They had chosen their side. "You have 30 minutes to collect whatever else you need, Eleanor," Richard continued, checking his Rolex, the one I'd given him on our 25th anniversary. "Anything left behind becomes our property." 3 months after our divorce was finalized, and this was how it ended. 35 years of marriage, of cooking meals, of kissing scraped knees, of planning birthday parties, of building a life, all dismissed with the cruel efficiency of someone discarding an outdated appliance. "You can't do this," I whispered, my voice barely audible even to my own ears. "This is my home too." Jennifer stepped forward, her perfectly manicured hand resting on her father's shoulder. At 32, she had grown to mirror Richard in more ways than one: ambitious, calculating, pragmatic to a fault. "Mom, it's all legal. The house was put in Dad's name years ago, remember? You signed the papers." Her tone was that of someone explaining something simple to a child. "The judge already ruled on this. We're just expediting the transition." Michael, my sweet boy who once couldn't sleep without my bedtime stories, couldn't even look me in the eye. At 29, he had always been the peacemaker, always caught between his sister's sharp edges and his father's domineering presence. "Michael?" I reached out toward him, but he stepped back. "It's better this way, Mom," he mumbled. "Clean break and all. 30 minutes. How do you pack 35 years into 30 minutes? I moved through the house in a daze, grabbing photos, my mother's pearls, the quilt my grandmother had made. Each room held memories that couldn't be packed away. The kitchen where I'd taught Jennifer to bake cookies, the living room where Michael had taken his first steps, the garden I had nurtured from bare soil. When I returned to the foyer, Richard was waiting with the front door open, as if he couldn't bear to have me in his house a moment longer than necessary. "Your time's up, Eleanor. Where am I supposed to go?" I asked, though I already knew he didn't care. "That's not our problem anymore," Jennifer replied, her voice clinically detached. "You should have thought about that before the divorce." As I stepped over the threshold, Richard placed something cold and metallic in my palm. My house key, the one I'd used every day for over 3 decades. "You won't be needing this anymore," he said with finality. The door closed behind me with a decisive click. I stood on the porch of what had been my home, surrounded by 3 suitcases and a cardboard box, the sum total of what remained of my life with them. Through the window, I could see them hugging, celebrating their victory. They thought they had won. They thought they had taken everything. What they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly imagine, was that I had been preparing for this moment for years. And the surprise I had in store for Richard Mitchell and our ungrateful children would change everything. I pulled out my phone and made the call I'd been saving for exactly this scenario. "Sarah, it's Eleanor. It's time. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story." I sat in Sarah's cozy living room, my hands wrapped around a mug of tea that had long gone cold. My oldest friend had taken me in without hesitation, her spare bedroom already prepared, as if she'd been expecting this day to come. "I told you years ago he was planning something like this," Sarah said, her voice gentle but tinged with the righteous anger of someone who'd watched a friend suffer too long. "Richard always played the long game. I just never thought the children would side with him," I whispered, the betrayal still fresh and raw. "Where did I go wrong with them, Sarah?" Sarah placed her hand over mine. "You didn't. Richard did what he always does. He manipulated them. Jennifer has always wanted his approval, and Michael has always followed the path of least resistance." I nodded, remembering how Richard had slowly isolated me from financial decisions over the decades. First it was, "Don't worry your pretty head about it." Then, "I've got it under control," until eventually I had no idea what we owned or owed. "Did you bring it?" Sarah asked, nodding toward my purse. I pulled out a small, weathered notebook. My insurance policy started 10 years ago when I first suspected Richard was having affairs. It contained dates, times, account numbers, overheard phone conversations, and photographs of documents I'd secretly copied. "Everything's here," I confirmed. "Every transaction, every offshore account, every client he's defrauded." Sarah's eyes widened. "Eleanor Mitchell, you cunning woman. I never would have thought you had it in you." A small smile crossed my face. "Neither would Richard. That was his mistake." My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. "Mom, We need Dad's vintage cufflinks for a business dinner. Where did you hide them? The audacity stole my breath. Not even a word about where I was or if I was okay. Don't answer, Sarah advised. They've made their choice. I set the phone down. Tomorrow we call Robert. Robert Williams had been Richard's biggest rival in the investment business for decades. He was also the man who had warned me at a Christmas party 7 years ago that my husband was playing with fire. At the time, I dismissed it as professional jealousy. Now, I understood it had been a warning. Are you sure you're ready for what comes next? Sarah asked. Once you start this, there's no turning back. I thought of the look on Richard's face as he closed the door on 35 years of marriage. I thought of Jennifer's cold dismissal and Michael's inability to meet my eyes. They think they've taken everything from me, I said, my voice growing stronger. But they have no idea what I'm about to take from them. As I drifted off to sleep that night in Sarah's guest room, surrounded by unfamiliar shadows, I realized something. For the first time in decades, I wasn't afraid of Richard Mitchell anymore, and that made me dangerous. Robert Williams's office overlooked Central Park, the expansive greenery a stark contrast to the steel and glass fortress of Williams Investment Group. At 65, Robert still commanded attention, silver-haired, impeccably dressed, with eyes that missed nothing. Eleanor, he said, rising from behind his desk as Sarah and I were shown in. I've been expecting your call for years. You have? I asked, surprised. He gestured for us to sit. Richard Mitchell has made a career of cutting corners and burning bridges. The only surprise is that you stayed as long as you did. I placed my notebook on his desk. I brought everything. Robert's eyebrows rose as he flipped through the pages. My God, Eleanor, this is comprehensive. I had a lot of sleepless nights, I said simply. For the next hour, we went through my evidence. The shell companies Richard had created to hide assets from clients, the forged signatures, the falsified returns, the money laundering for certain special clients whose names never appeared in official records. This is enough to bury him, Robert said finally, looking up from the notebook. But are you prepared for the fallout? Your children are implicated in some of these transactions. My heart constricted. Jennifer is. Michael, I don't think he knows. He's the CFO, Eleanor, Robert said gently. Even if he didn't actively participate, he signed off on these statements. The realization hit me like a physical blow. My son, my sweet, conflict-avoiding son, could face criminal charges. I need time to think, I said, suddenly uncertain. Robert nodded. Take a day, but only a day. If what's in this notebook is accurate, a lot of people are losing money as we speak. As we left the building, my phone rang. Michael's name flashed on the screen. Should I answer? I asked Sarah. Your call, she replied. With trembling fingers, I accepted. Michael? Mom. His voice sounded strained. Where are you? Dad's looking for some documents he says you took. So that was why he'd called. Not concern, but Richard's bidding. I'm safe, I said carefully. That's all you need to know. Mom, please. He lowered his voice. Things are tense here. Dad's worried about some audit. The fear in his voice gave me pause. Did he truly not know? Michael, I said slowly. What exactly did your father tell you about our divorce? The silence stretched between us, weighted with unspoken truths. He said you were trying to take the company, Michael finally answered. That you got greedy. I laughed, a hollow sound devoid of humor. Is that what you believe? Another pause. I don't know what to believe anymore. It was the first honest thing he'd said to me in years. Michael, we need to talk. Not on the phone. Alone. No Jennifer, no Richard. I can't. You can. Tomorrow, noon, at Riverside Park. The bench where we used to feed the ducks when you were little. After a long moment, he whispered, okay. As I hung up, Sarah looked at me questioningly. Change of plans, I said. I need to give Michael a chance. But as we walked away from Robert's building, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The next morning, Sarah's doorbell rang at 7 a.m. Through the peephole, I saw Jennifer standing in the hallway, immaculately dressed in a business suit despite the early hour. Don't answer it, Sarah whispered from behind me. I have to, I replied. She's still my daughter. When I opened the door, Jennifer didn't wait for an invitation. She strode in, surveying Sarah's apartment with thinly veiled disdain. So this is where you're hiding, she said. I'm not hiding, Jennifer. Your father threw me out, remember? She waved away my words as if they were irrelevant. I need those documents you took. What documents? Jennifer's perfectly composed face showed a flicker of irritation. Don't play dumb, Mom. It doesn't suit you. Dad says you've been collecting information for years, planning this. Planning what exactly? To destroy him. To destroy what we've built. She adjusted her designer watch, another gift from Richard, no doubt. I won't let you. The coldness in her voice chilled me. This wasn't the little girl who'd once crawled into my bed during thunderstorms. This was Richard's protégé, molded in his image. What happened to you, Jennifer? I asked softly. Something flashed in her eyes. Pain, perhaps, or a memory of who she'd once been. But it vanished quickly. I grew up. I learned how the world really works. She stepped closer. Whatever you're planning, stop now. You don't want to go to war with Dad. You'll lose everything. I already have, I replied. Jennifer's expression hardened. Not yet, you haven't. This is just a taste. Dad knows you met with Robert Williams yesterday. He has friends everywhere, Mom. Eyes everywhere. My blood ran cold. Are you threatening me? I'm warning you. For old time's sake. She reached into her purse and placed an envelope on Sarah's coffee table. Sign these papers. They're a formal relinquishment of any claims to Dad's business or assets. Sign them, and this all goes away. And if I don't? Jennifer straightened her jacket. Then I can't protect you. Or Michael. Protect Michael? From what? From what's coming. She moved toward the door. You have until midnight. After that, Dad releases the evidence. Evidence of what? I demanded. Tax fraud, with your signature all over it. After she left, Sarah emerged from the kitchen where she'd been listening. He's framing you, she said. I nodded, opening the envelope with shaking hands. The documents inside were comprehensive, a complete surrender of any claims I might have on Richard's assets. I need to warn Michael, I said, reaching for my phone. But Michael wasn't answering, and as noon approached, I faced a terrible choice. Sign away my future, or risk walking into a trap at Riverside Park. Sarah handed me her pepper spray. Whatever you decide, be careful. Richard is desperate, and desperate men are dangerous. As I stepped outside, dark clouds gathered overhead, promising a storm, both literally and figuratively. What I didn't know then was that someone else had heard every word of my conversation with Jennifer. Someone who would change everything. Riverside Park was quieter than usual, the impending storm keeping most visitors away. I sat on our bench, the one where Michael had fed ducks as a toddler, his laughter bubbling up like sunshine, and waited, the envelope heavy in my purse. At 12:15, I was still alone. At 12:30, I began to worry. By 12:45, I accepted the truth. Michael wasn't coming. As I stood to leave, a voice called out behind me. Mrs. Mitchell? A young woman approached, early 20s, with a messenger bag slung across her body. Her nervous energy was palpable. Yes, I replied cautiously. My name is Olivia Torres. I worked as Michael's assistant at Mitchell Investments. She glanced around anxiously. He sent me to tell you he couldn't make it. He's being watched. By who? Richard? She nodded. And Jennifer. Michael asked me to give you this. She handed me a USB drive. He said it would explain everything. Is he in danger? The thought of my son trapped in Richard's web made my heart race. I think we all are, Olivia said quietly. Michael found something in the company accounts last week, something that scared him enough to make copies of all the records. She lowered her voice. Mrs. Mitchell, I overheard Jennifer on the phone yesterday. They're planning to pin everything on Michael if things go bad. The betrayal was breathtaking. Richard would sacrifice our son to save himself. Why are you helping us? I asked. Olivia hesitated. Michael was kind to me when others weren't, and she seemed to debate whether to continue. 2 years ago, my parents lost their retirement savings. They'd invested everything with Mitchell Investments. Your husband told them it was a market correction. Later, I found documents showing their money had been diverted to an account in the Caymans. My shame was immediate and overwhelming. How many lives had Richard destroyed while I looked the other way? I need to see what's on this drive, I said. Not here, Olivia warned. They might be watching. Michael said to tell you one more thing. Remember, the cabin. The cabin. Our family retreat in the Adirondacks, purchased in my name before we were married. The one property Richard couldn't touch during the divorce. Thank you, Olivia. You should leave town for a few days. She shook her head. I can't. My parents? Take them with you, I insisted, pressing some cash into her hand. Please. It's not safe. As she walked away, fat raindrops began to fall, the storm finally breaking. I hurried back to Sarah's apartment, the USB drive clutched tightly in my fist. Sarah was waiting with her laptop ready. Michael didn't show? No, but he sent a message. I inserted the drive with trembling hands. What we found inside turned my blood to ice. Years of fraudulent transactions, all meticulously documented. Clients' money siphoned into offshore accounts. Falsified returns. Tax evasion on a massive scale. And the most damning evidence of all, Documents with my forged signature, dating back years, implicating me in all of it. He's been planning this for a decade, I whispered, staring at the screen in horror, setting me up as the fall person if he ever got caught. Sarah's face was grim. Eleanor, these forgeries are good, but they won't stand up to forensic analysis. We need to get this to the authorities before Richard does. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mom, it's Michael, using Olivia's phone. Dad knows I copied the files. Jennifer told him, not safe here. Meeting you at the cabin tomorrow. Come alone. As I showed Sarah the message, the pieces finally clicked into place. The cabin, I said suddenly. That's where we need to go. Now. Why? What's at the cabin? I smiled for the first time in days. The one thing Richard never knew about. The drive to the Adirondacks was tense, each mile bringing us closer to what I hoped would be salvation, or at least vindication. Rain lashed against the windshield of Sarah's car, the wipers barely keeping up with the deluge. Are you going to tell me what we're looking for? Sarah asked, eyes fixed on the treacherous mountain road. When Richard and I bought the cabin, I insisted on a safe. He thought it was for jewelry. But it wasn't? I shook my head. It was for documents. Important ones. We arrived at dusk, the cabin a dark silhouette against the stormy sky. It had been years since my last visit, but the key still worked, the door swinging open with a familiar creak. Inside, everything was exactly as I remembered. The stone fireplace, the worn leather sofa, the kitchen where we'd prepared countless family meals. Before the ambition, before the affairs, before Richard became someone I no longer recognized. Where's this safe? Sarah asked, shaking rain from her coat. I moved to the main bedroom, kneeling beside the bed to pull up a floorboard that had always been loose. Beneath it, just as I'd left it, was a small floor safe. Richard never knew the combination, I explained, turning the dial with practiced ease. It's the date we met, the date we bought this cabin, and the dates the children were born. The safe opened with a soft click. Inside lay a manila envelope, untouched for over a decade. What is it? Sarah asked, leaning closer. With reverent care, I removed the contents, a deed, stock certificates, and a handwritten letter. When my father died, he left me an inheritance, I explained, spreading the documents on the bed. Richard never knew how much. I told him it was just a small sum, but it was actually quite substantial. Sarah's eyes widened as she examined the stock certificates. Eleanor, these are worth millions, I finished for her. I invested everything in blue-chip stocks, reinvested all the dividends, never touched a penny. All these years, Sarah whispered. You had this safety net and never used it? It wasn't for me, I said softly. It was for Jennifer and Michael, in case something happened to me, or in case Richard's house of cards collapsed, Sarah completed. I nodded. I never imagined I'd need it because he betrayed me. I thought it would be market forces or legal troubles that brought him down. As we catalogued the assets, the true extent of my secret fortune became clear. Enough to start over, enough to fight back, enough to ensure Richard couldn't destroy our children, even as he tried to destroy me. A noise outside stopped our conversation cold, the sound of tires on gravel. Michael? Sarah suggested. I shook my head, a chill running down my spine. He said tomorrow. Carefully, I moved to the window and peered through the curtains. A familiar black Mercedes was parked beside Sarah's car, its headlights still on, illuminating the curtain of rain. It's Richard, I whispered, and he's not alone. Through the downpour, I could make out 3 figures approaching the cabin. Richard in his expensive coat, Jennifer close behind, and between them, Michael, his posture defeated, his hands appearing to be bound in front of him. Oh, God, Sarah gasped, looking over my shoulder. What have they done to him? I quickly gathered the documents, shoving them back into the safe. We need to hide these, now. What about Michael? They're forcing him here. My mind raced. There's a cellar entrance around back. If we can get out that way. The front door burst open with a crash of splintering wood. Richard Mitchell stood in the doorway, rain dripping from his coat, his face a mask of cold fury. Hello, Eleanor, he said, his voice eerily calm. Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out? Behind him, Jennifer pushed Michael forward. In the dim light, I could see bruising on my son's face, his eyes wild with fear. I'm sorry, Mom, he choked out. They made me tell them. About the cabin, about the safe. Richard smiled, the expression never reaching his eyes. You see, Eleanor, that's the problem with secrets. They always come out in the end. He stepped fully into the cabin, water pooling at his feet. Now, he continued, pulling a gun from his coat pocket, let's discuss those documents you've been hiding from me. The cabin seemed to shrink with Richard's presence, the walls closing in as he leveled the gun at me. Sarah stood frozen beside me, her breath coming in short, frightened gasps. "Richard," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady, "put the gun down. Whatever you think this will accomplish, it won't." His laugh was hollow. "Always the voice of reason, aren't you, Eleanor? Always the moral compass. How convenient that must have been while you were stealing from me." "Stealing?" I couldn't mask my incredulity. "That money was mine, my inheritance, which became mine when we married," he snapped. "Everything of yours became mine. That was the deal." Jennifer pushed Michael into a chair, her face set in grim determination. But there was something in her eyes I hadn't seen before. Uncertainty. "Dad," she said quietly, "you didn't say anything about guns." Richard ignored her, his focus entirely on me. "Open the safe, Eleanor." "No." The word surprised even me with its strength. His finger tightened on the trigger. "I won't ask again." "If you shoot me, you'll never get the combination," I pointed out, my heart hammering so loudly I was sure everyone could hear it. "And you'll have added murder to your list of crimes." Richard's face contorted with rage. "Crimes? Let me tell you about crimes, Eleanor. Your precious son here was embezzling from the company, siphoning funds to his own accounts." "That's a lie," Michael burst out, struggling against whatever bound his hands. "Mom, don't listen to him." Richard backhanded him with such force that Michael's chair toppled over. He crashed to the floor with a cry of pain that tore through my heart. "Stop it!" Sarah moved toward Michael, but Richard swung the gun toward her. "Stay where you are," he warned. Something shifted in the atmosphere then, a subtle change in the power dynamics. I saw Jennifer flinch at her father's violence, saw doubt flicker across her perfect features. "Jennifer," I said carefully, "you know this isn't right." "Shut up, Mom," she replied, but her voice lacked conviction. "Your father has been stealing from clients for years," I continued, my eyes locked on hers. "He's committed fraud, tax evasion, money laundering, and now he's holding your brother at gunpoint. Is this really who you want to be?" "I said shut up," Jennifer's voice cracked. "You abandoned us. You gave up." "I filed for divorce," I corrected gently. "I never abandoned you. I never would have abandoned either of you." Richard's patience snapped. "Enough. Jennifer, find the safe. Now." As Jennifer hesitantly began searching the room, I caught Michael's eye from where he lay on the floor. A silent communication passed between us, a plan forming in the space of a heartbeat. "It's under the bed," I said finally. "I'll open it." Richard motioned with the gun, slowly. I knelt beside the bed, lifted the floorboard, and dialed the combination, aware of Richard hovering over me, his breath hot on my neck. The safe clicked open. "There," I said, stepping back. "Take it. Take everything. Just leave us alone." Richard holstered his gun to reach for the documents inside, his greed momentarily overriding his caution. In that instant, Michael surged upward from the floor, his bound hands swinging in an arc that connected with the back of Richard's knees. Richard stumbled, cursing. Sarah lunged for the gun. Jennifer screamed, and in the chaos, I made the split-second decision that would change everything. I grabbed the oil lamp from the bedside table and hurled it against the wall. Glass shattered. Flames erupted, catching the dry wooden paneling. Smoke billowed through the cabin as the fire spread with frightening speed. "Run!" I screamed, pulling Sarah toward the back door. Michael scrambled to his feet, staggering toward us. "The documents!" Richard cried, still on his knees, reaching into the safe even as flames licked at his expensive coat. The last thing I saw as we fled into the rainy night was Jennifer, frozen in the doorway, torn between following us and helping her father. "Jennifer, come with us," I called desperately. Our eyes met across the growing inferno, mother and daughter, separated by more than just flames. And then she turned back toward Richard. We huddled in Sarah's car, soaked and shaking, watching the cabin burn. The rain had intensified, but it wasn't enough to douse the flames consuming my past. "Are they still in there?" Sarah whispered, her face ghostly in the dashboard lights. Michael, his hands now freed from the zip ties Jennifer had used, pressed his face against the window. "I don't see them." As if summoned by his words, two figures emerged from the blazing cabin. Richard, clutching a charred bundle of papers, and Jennifer, supporting him as he limped toward their Mercedes. "We need to go," I said urgently. "Now!" Sarah started the engine just as Richard spotted us. Even through the rain and darkness, I could see the murderous rage on his face. "He got the documents," Michael said, slumping in the back seat as we lurched down the muddy drive. "It's over." A strange calm settled over me. "No. It's not. Mom, you don't understand." Michael insisted. Those papers were everything. The proof of his crimes. Your inheritance. Not everything, I interrupted. What he took were copies. Outdated ones. Michael and Sarah stared at me in disbelief. The real documents are in a safe deposit box in Boston, I explained. Along with copies of everything on your USB drive, Michael. I made duplicates this morning before we left. For the first time in days, hope flickered in my son's battered face. You knew he'd come? I suspected. Your father was always predictable in his desperation. I turned to face him fully. Now tell me everything. Why did they bring you here? What does Richard really want? Michael's story poured out as Sarah navigated the treacherous mountain roads. How he'd discovered the extent of his father's crimes while preparing quarterly reports. How he'd confronted Richard, only to be told that I was the mastermind behind the fraud. How Jennifer had found him copying files and betrayed him to their father. He's planning to flee the country, Michael concluded. Tomorrow night, he has a private plane on standby and accounts set up in countries with no extradition treaties. And he's pinning everything on me, I said, the final piece clicking into place. Not just you anymore, Michael said grimly. Once I found those files, I became a liability too. Jennifer's the only one he trusts now. She looked uncertain back there, Sarah observed, when Richard hit you. I remembered the doubt in Jennifer's eyes, the hesitation. She's starting to see him for what he is. It's too late, Michael said bitterly. The FBI has been investigating Dad for months. An agent approached me last week asking questions. That's why I started digging deeper. When everything falls apart, Jennifer will go down with him. The thought of both my children in prison made my blood run cold. We need to get to Boston, get those documents. Then we go to the FBI ourselves. They'll never believe you over Richard, Michael warned. He has too many connections, too many people in his pocket. Maybe, I acknowledged, but there's someone who might tip the scales in our favor. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to a number I hadn't called in years. Someone Richard fears more than anyone. Who? Sarah asked. His first wife. Michael's sharp intake of breath told me he understood the significance. Patricia Mitchell had vanished from Richard's life long before I entered it, her name forbidden in our household. All I knew were whispered rumors of a settlement that had nearly bankrupted Richard 30 years ago. As I pressed dial, lightning illuminated the road ahead, revealing a police roadblock, and Richard's Mercedes already pulled over, Richard himself gesturing wildly toward our approaching car. He's reporting us for arson, Sarah realized, slowing down. We can't stop, I said, the phone ringing in my ear. We have to get through. Sarah's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. How? As Patricia's voicemail message played in my ear, I made another split-second decision. Floor it, now. The motel room was sparse but clean, its anonymity our only protection. After evading the roadblock, Sarah's unexpected driving skills sending us bumping through a drainage ditch and onto a service road, we'd driven for hours, switching to Michael's credit card for the room once we were sure we weren't being followed. Patricia will call back, I assured Michael and Sarah, though the woman hadn't answered any of my 3 attempts to reach her. She has to. Michael paced the small room, his nervous energy palpable. Even if she does, what can she possibly tell us that would help now? Dad's probably told the police we kidnapped me, committed arson, maybe even tried to kill him. Patricia knows things about your father, I said. Things that even I don't know. My phone rang, startling us all. Unknown number. Eleanor Mitchell, I answered, my voice steadier than I felt. I never thought I'd hear from you. The voice was cultured, with a hint of a southern accent. Richard must have finally shown his true colors. Patricia? The one and only, though I haven't used that name in decades. There was rustling on the line, as if she was settling in for a long conversation. Tell me what that bastard has done now. For the next 20 minutes, I laid out everything. The divorce, the eviction, Richard's fraud, the setup, the cabin, the gun. Patricia listened without interrupting. So he hasn't changed, she said when I finished. Still the same monster, just with new victims. I need your help, I told her. Whatever you know, whatever you have on him. I need it. Her laugh was brittle. Oh, honey, I have more than you can imagine. But it'll cost you. I have money, I said. My inheritance. I don't want your money, Patricia cut in. I want to watch him burn. I want to be there when it happens. Done. Then meet me tomorrow, noon, the Harborview Hotel in Boston, room 712. Come alone. After she hung up, I relayed the plan to Sarah and Michael. I don't like it, Sarah said immediately. It could be a trap. Richard could have gotten to her. It's not a trap, I assured her. The hatred in her voice when she mentioned Richard, that can't be faked. So what's the plan? Michael asked. We get these documents from Boston, meet with Patricia, then what? Then we go to the FBI, I said, together, with everything we have. And Jennifer? Michael's voice softened at his sister's name. The question hung in the air between us. Despite everything, Jennifer was still my daughter, still Michael's sister. We try to save her, I said finally, if she'll let us. As dawn broke, my phone buzzed with a text from another unknown number. It's Jennifer. We need to talk. Alone. I showed the message to the others. It's another trap, Sarah insisted. Maybe, I conceded. Or maybe she's finally seeing the truth. How would she even get your number? Michael asked. A cold realization washed over me. She wouldn't, unless... I never finished the sentence. The motel room door burst open, wood splintering around the lock. Men in dark suits flooded in, guns drawn. FBI, hands where we can see them. We froze, arms raised. A man in a tailored suit stepped through the chaos, his badge glinting in the early morning light. Eleanor Mitchell? He asked, though he clearly knew who I was. I'm Special Agent Carter. You're under arrest for fraud, money laundering, and tax evasion. As they handcuffed me, I looked desperately at Michael. Get to Boston! Find Patricia! The last thing I saw as they led me away was Sarah grabbing Michael's arm, stopping him from interfering, and standing in the parking lot, watching with a mixture of triumph and regret, was my daughter Jennifer. The interrogation room was deliberately intimidating, windowless, sterile, with a camera recording my every move. I'd been there for hours, repeating my story to increasingly skeptical agents. Mrs. Mitchell, Special Agent Carter said, sliding photos across the table. These are documents with your signature on them, transfers authorizing the movement of client funds to offshore accounts. They're forgeries, I insisted for the dozenth time. My ex-husband set me up, that's what they all say. Carter's smile didn't reach his eyes. But here's what I find interesting. We've been building this case for months. Then suddenly, your son provides evidence implicating you as the mastermind. And now you're claiming it's all a frame job. Because it is. Richard is the criminal, not me. Carter leaned back, studying me. Your ex-husband is a respected financial advisor with powerful friends. You're a housewife with a grudge. Who do you think the jury will believe? The door opened, and another agent whispered something to Carter. His expression shifted. Seems you have a visitor, he said, gathering his files. Someone very insistent on seeing you. He left, and minutes later the door opened again. Jennifer stepped in, closing it behind her. I straightened. Emotions warring within me. Love, hurt, betrayal, hope. Jennifer. She looked different somehow, smaller, less certain. The perfectly polished corporate facade had cracked. Mom, she began, her voice trembling slightly. I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth. I've only ever told you the truth, I said quietly. She placed a folder on the table between us. These documents. Dad says you created them to embezzle from the company, that you've been planning to destroy him for years. I didn't touch the folder. And you believe him? I don't know what to believe anymore. Jennifer's composure cracked entirely, tears spilling down her cheeks. Dad has evidence. Michael has evidence. You have evidence. Everyone has their version of the truth, and I can't tell which is real. Why are you here, Jennifer? I asked gently. What do you want from me? She wiped her tears angrily. Last night after the cabin, Dad was different, frightening. He told me we needed to take care of Michael before he caused more problems. The way he said it, she shuddered. I think he meant permanently. Ice flooded my veins. Where is Michael now? I don't know. I helped the FBI find you, but Michael and Sarah weren't there when they made the arrest. Thank God for small mercies. Jennifer, listen to me. Your father is desperate. He's planning to flee the country tonight, and he's setting me up to take the fall for his crimes. He said the same about you, she countered. Then look at the evidence objectively, I urged. Those signatures, compare them to ones you know are genuinely mine. The timing of the transfers, the accounts they went to. Follow the money, Jennifer. She hesitated. Even if what you're saying is true, it's too late. The FBI has their case. Dad's lawyers are the best in the business. It's never too late to choose the truth, I said, reaching across the table to take her hand. Help me, Jennifer. Help your brother. Something shifted in her eyes, resolution replacing doubt. What do you need me to do? Find Michael. Tell him to still meet Patricia, and I need you to get a message to Agent Carter. Tell him to check account number 8947302 at First Maritime Bank. It's where Richard keeps his contingency fund. Jennifer stood, her decision made. I'll do it. But Mom, if you're lying to me, I'm not, I promised. I never have. After she left, I sagged in my chair, exhaustion overwhelming me. Had I reached her? Had I truly changed her mind? Or was this another of Richard's manipulations? The door opened again, admitting Agent Carter with a strange expression on his face. "Mrs. Mitchell," he said formally, "you're free to go." I blinked in confusion. "What?" "New evidence has come to light," he said cryptically. "Evidence that corroborates parts of your story." "What evidence? Who brought it?" Carter's poker face slipped, revealing genuine astonishment. "Your ex-husband's first wife, Patricia Lawson. She's waiting outside with documentation going back 30 years. As I collected my belongings in a daze, one thought burned in my mind. Patricia had come to me, not waited for our meeting. But why? The answer waited in the lobby. Patricia Lawson, elegant in her 60s, standing beside a man I recognized immediately, Robert Williams. "Eleanor," Robert greeted me grimly, "we have a problem. Richard has Michael." "What do you mean Richard has Michael?" The FBI office seemed to spin around me. "How is that possible?" Patricia Lawson, still beautiful at 67, her silver hair elegantly styled, took my arm, steadying me. "Let's not discuss this here. My car is waiting." In the back of Patricia's limousine, with Robert beside me and Patricia opposite, the full story emerged. After my arrest, Michael had insisted on continuing to Boston alone, sending Sarah to contact Robert for help. But Michael never made it to the safe deposit box. Richard's men had intercepted him on the highway. "How do you know this?" I demanded. "Because Richard called me," Patricia said, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her purse. "After all these years, the bastard called me directly. He wants to make a trade." "Michael, for what?" "For this." Patricia withdrew a small leather journal from her purse. "My record of every illegal transaction Richard conducted during our marriage. The original template for all his later schemes. And for you," Robert added quietly. "He wants you both to tie up loose ends before he leaves the country." The implication was clear. Richard had no intention of letting any of us survive this encounter. "Where's Sarah now?" I asked. "Safe," Robert assured me. "At my office, with security." "And Jennifer?" Patricia's expression softened slightly. "She's the one who told us about Michael. She's been working with the FBI since this morning, providing access to Mitchell Investments' internal servers." My daughter had chosen the right side after all. Relief washed through me, followed immediately by renewed fear for Michael. "What's the plan?" I asked. Patricia and Robert exchanged glances. "Richard has demanded a meeting," Patricia explained. "Tonight at 8 p.m., the old Mitchell Investments warehouse by the harbor. He'll bring Michael. We bring the journal and you." "It's a trap," I said immediately. "Of course it is," Patricia agreed, her southern accent more pronounced with her anger. "Richard doesn't plan on any of us walking out of that warehouse alive, but he doesn't know that we've been planning for this day for 30 years. "We?" I looked between them. Robert's expression was grim. "Patricia and I have been partners in more ways than one since shortly after her divorce. We've been gathering evidence against Richard for decades. Why wait so long?" I couldn't help asking. Patricia's smile was cold. "We needed him to build his empire before we tore it down. The higher he climbed, the harder the fall. And we needed to make sure he couldn't hurt anyone else when he went down." "Like you," Robert added softly. "And your children." The realization was staggering. "You've been watching us? All these years?" "Protecting you as much as we could," Patricia corrected. "But Richard was careful around you. He learned from his mistakes with me." The limousine pulled up to a towering glass building, Robert's corporate headquarters. "We have 6 hours until the meeting," Robert said, checking his watch. 6 hours to prepare for every contingency." "And the FBI?" I asked. "Agent Carter?" "Will be there, but not visibly," Patricia assured me. "Richard has too many friends in law enforcement. We can't risk tipping him off." As we rode the private elevator to Robert's penthouse office, I finally asked the question that had been burning in my mind. "Why help me? Why now?" Patricia's eyes met mine. Decades of shared pain passing between us. Two women who had loved and been destroyed by the same man. "Because you're the only other person who truly understands what he is," she said simply. "And because I made a promise to myself that Richard Mitchell would never destroy another family." In Robert's office, we found not only Sarah waiting, but Jennifer as well, surrounded by laptops and documents. "Mom!" Jennifer rushed to embrace me, all corporate coolness gone. "I'm so sorry for everything." Over her shoulder, I met Sarah's tearful gaze. My oldest friend nodded once. Jennifer's conversion was genuine. "We're going to get Michael back," I promised, holding my daughter tight. "And then we're going to make your father pay for what he's done to all of us." Patricia cleared her throat. "The clock is ticking. Richard's plane is scheduled to depart at 10 p.m. If we're going to save Michael and stop Richard once and for all, we need to move fast. On the wall behind her, a large screen displayed satellite images of the warehouse, while another showed a blinking dot, Michael's phone, moving along the harbor road. "It's time," Robert announced, opening a briefcase to reveal what looked like communications equipment. "Eleanor, are you ready to face Richard one last time?" I thought of my son in Richard's clutches, of the decades of manipulation and abuse, of the lives Richard had ruined in his quest for wealth and power. "I've been ready for 35 years, I said, a calm certainty settling over me. "Let's finish this." As our unlikely alliance prepared for battle, I realized that Richard had made a fatal miscalculation. He thought he was dealing with a bitter ex-wife seeking revenge. He had no idea he was facing a mother determined to save her children. The abandoned warehouse loomed against the night sky, its windows dark and broken like missing teeth. I stood beside Patricia at the entrance, the weight of Robert's hidden microphone heavy against my collarbone. "Remember," Patricia whispered, "keep him talking. The FBI needs time to get into position." I nodded, clutching the leather journal that had become our bargaining chip. "What if he's already hurt Michael?" Patricia's eyes, so like Jennifer's in shape if not in color, hardened. "Then Richard will learn what true vengeance is." The warehouse door creaked open at our approach. Inside, emergency lights cast eerie shadows across rusting machinery and abandoned crates. And at the center, like a stage set for the final act of a tragedy, stood Richard Mitchell. "Right on time," he called, his voice echoing. I've always appreciated punctuality in my wives. Beside him, bound to a chair, was Michael. His face was bruised, his eyes desperate but alive. The relief nearly buckled my knees. "Let him go, Richard," I demanded, stepping forward. "You have what you want. Me, the journal. Just let our son go." Richard's laugh was cold. "Our son? That's touching, Eleanor. Suddenly remembering your maternal instincts." "I never forgot them," I replied, moving closer. "Unlike you, who's willing to sacrifice your children to save yourself?" His expression darkened. "Careful, Eleanor. You're not in a position to moralize. And you're not in a position to run anymore," Patricia interjected, her southern drawl more pronounced with her anger. "It's over, Richard." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Richard's face. "Patricia, you look, well, for someone who should be dead." "Disappointed?" she asked sweetly. "I've survived everything you've thrown at me." "We both have." She gestured to me. "Did you really think we wouldn't find each other eventually?" Richard's hand moved to his jacket pocket, where I knew he kept his gun. "A touching reunion, but I'm afraid this conversation has reached its conclusion." He withdrew the weapon, pointing it at Michael. "The journal, now, or our son becomes an only child." I stepped forward, extending the journal. "Take it. Just don't hurt him." As Richard reached for the journal with his free hand, I locked eyes with Michael. A silent communication passed between us, a mother and son, united in purpose. In that moment, everything happened at once. Michael kicked out, his chair toppling sideways. Patricia threw something, a pen, with startling accuracy, striking Richard's gun hand. I lunged forward, driving my shoulder into Richard's chest. The gun discharged, the shot deafening in the enclosed space. Pain exploded in my shoulder, but adrenaline kept me moving. Richard and I crashed to the floor, the journal scattering across the concrete. "FBI, freeze!" Agent Carter's voice boomed through the warehouse as agents flooded in from every entrance. Richard's face, inches from mine, contorted with hatred. "You ruined everything," he hissed. I met his gaze without flinching. "No, Richard, you did that yourself." As agents pulled Richard away, Jennifer rushed to Michael, freeing him from his restraints. Sarah and Robert appeared from where they'd been monitoring everything, relief evident on their faces. "Mom, you're bleeding," Jennifer cried, noticing my shoulder for the first time. "It's nothing," I assured her, though the pain was intensifying. "Just a graze." As paramedics tended to my wound, I watched Richard being led away in handcuffs, his empire crumbling around him. The man who had once seemed so powerful now looked small, diminished. "He'll try to make a deal," Patricia noted, joining me on the ambulance's tailgate. "Offer up names of clients involved in his schemes." "Let him," I said wearily. "Justice is justice, no matter how it comes." Michael and Jennifer approached, both looking exhausted but somehow lighter, as if a burden had been lifted. "What happens now?" Michael asked, taking my hand. I looked at my children, really looked at them, and saw not the bitter adults who had thrown me out of my home, but the vulnerable, confused people they'd become under their father's influence. "Now we heal," I said simply, "together." 6 months later, I stood on the porch of my new home, smaller than the old one, but truly mine. The criminal trials were ongoing, but Richard's financial empire had collapsed completely. The money I'd secretly saved had been enough to start over, enough to help Michael and Jennifer start over too. Sarah sat beside me on the porch swing, 2 glasses of wine between us. "Did you ever imagine it would end this way?" she asked. I thought of the frightened woman I'd been, standing on another porch with 3 suitcases and a broken heart. "No," I admitted. "I thought I'd lost everything. Instead, you found yourself," Sarah observed. Inside, I could hear Jennifer and Michael laughing as they prepared dinner. Patricia and Robert would be joining us later, our unlikely family, forged in fire. "You know what the biggest surprise was?" I said, watching the sunset paint the sky. "Not that I was strong enough to fight back. Not that we won." "Then what?" I smiled, feeling the weight of the past finally lifting. That losing everything I thought I needed was actually the beginning of everything I truly wanted. As my children called us into dinner, I realized that Richard's final cruel act, throwing me out of my home, had actually been my first step toward freedom. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't getting even, it's getting better. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.